So I think about my time in the city, and when I would do team building with my team, we never went kayaking or climbing up mountains. What we did was we went to Tower Hamlets and we sponsored schools. Sure. And we worked with kids on their maths and their English, and we became part of the board of trustees for some of these schools in the East End that really needed help. So for me, I felt a tremendous amount of guilt being just a few miles away where there was so much money being generated from a part of London that really needed focus and attention. So I would always try to inject soul into my working life. With the co-op, it was already built in, which made it easy. Someone asked me once, you've got this job, what do you do pro bono? What do you do?
Yeah.
I do my job. So I get to work with schools, I get to work with communities, I get to work with suppliers in Africa.
That's your way of giving back.
It's the co-op's way of giving back.
Yeah.
And as the CEO, I just kind of plug into that and amplify it, which is, it's a great place to work. So Co-operative is an organization, a commercial organization that is owned by the people who use it or the people who work in it. So we have 6.2 million members. That's grown actually by 2 million over the last couple of years. They direct what the co-op does. They help us develop products. They help us determine where we spend our profits. So that's the difference. The great thing about the co-op is that our profits don't go to shareholders. Yeah. They really only go two ways. They either go back into the business, they're reinvested, or they go to our members in terms of lower prices or additional services, or into their communities. So if you think about since 2016, we've put £117 million back into 7,000 community projects. You wouldn't be doing that if you were trying to pay out dividends to shareholders as well. We've invested around £145 million over the last couple of years in member prices and in member offers. Again, and that was during the cost of living crisis where we invested. It wasn't suppliers paying for these lower prices. You wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't, if you were trying to pay shareholders. One other and there's so many examples, but as a cooperative, we are founded on a number of values and principles, and one of those is self-help and education. And maybe you'll ask me later more about the co-op's history because it's incredibly interesting, but we run 38 academies across the north of England. We serve 21,000 children, and we pick schools that really can use investment and communities that can use investment. So if you think about the national average, the percentage of students on school meals, it's about 25%.
Yes.
In our schools, it's 45%, and in some schools, it's 75%. We have, out of those 21,000 students, 7,000 of them speak English as a second language. And we invest very heavily in these schools. We have a track record of turning around needs improvement schools into good schools, into outstanding schools. Every child gets a free breakfast so that no child has to start their day without a full stomach. We have community fridges for families so that they can take food home for the rest of the family as well. And again, if you think about the sort of time and investment that goes into setting that up, you can't do that if you're paying shareholders. No. You can do it when you're serving your members. The final thing I'll say about our schools is we invest heavily in our students as well. So on average across the UK, when a child leaves school, 11.9% of them are not in education, employment, or training. That's 11.9%. In our schools, it's 1.9%. Wow. So we invest in those children's futures as well. So it's a wonderful thing to be a cooperative where your profits are contained, for the benefit of your members and their communities, and you can do so much with that. The problem, though, was that the CV said one thing. It said global, big jobs, travels around the world, and my home life had these 2-year-old twins in it. So I remember one discussion that I was having where they said, Mexico has a problem and Australia has a problem. So we want you to run this part of this company and fix Mexico and Australia plus everything else. And for me to fix Mexico and Australia would have meant someone else taking care of my children. So I came home and I said to my husband, I am actually unemployable at this point because the CV and the home life just, they don't match. Every parent will know it's certain times, then the children go to school and you find out that your work requirements change when they go to school. Then they get a bit older and they have their own activities. So that was a big learning for me, actually, because if you want to keep women in the workplace, and also, if I just go back a minute,
Sure.
a piece of advice that I got when I had the twins, and this was sadly from a woman, she said, now that you're back at work, don't talk about the children, because people will think that you're no longer focused on your job.
Because your family, obviously, your father would have been on a very, very, a very high income earner. Why did you feel you needed to be on your own 2 feet?
Because he was a very high income earner and then he was unemployed.
Okay.
Then he was a high income earner and then he was unemployed. So when we were in Houston, I can't remember which time, we were there twice, one time very briefly and then one time slightly longer. He lost his job. It was during the oil crisis.
Sure.
And at that point, it would have been the later time, I would have been the only person working in the household.
Okay.
So my experience of work was very unstable, very tumultuous. And my view was, I've got to go to university. I have to be able to have a stable income and a stable future. You're not going to get to university if you don't study hard. And especially if I thought we were going to stay in the US at the time, you don't go to university unless you get a scholarship or you can afford a lot of money to pay for it.